Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of Learning Japanese. In this video, we are doing another edition of anime vocabulary. And this time around, the show that we are covering is going to be Owarimonogatari, and this is going to be the 10th episode of Owarimonogatari. So with that being said, here's the list of the words that we're going to cover in this video real quick, and now let's just jump into this bad boy. So for our first vocabulary term, we have the word Somosomo.
そもそも僕たちはこの後どうすればいいんですか
And this is going to be one of those onomatopoeic sounding transitions or adverbs kind of. And what somosomo is going to translate to is just basically to begin with, or in the first place, or to start with, something along those lines. And so the example sentence that we have in the actual episode is just going to be simply そもそも僕たちはこの後どうすればいいんですか? And so what this is going to translate to is just basically in the first place, or to begin with, what should we do? And this is actually a pretty cool example sentence, even though it's pretty simple, because other than the new vocabulary word that we're covering here, somosomo, this is basically covering a grammar pattern that we've covered in the past. So check out the video covering the hypothetical form plus the phrasing ga e to know what that means. And if you don't want to do that, then I guess we'll cover it anyways, because we're going to break down the sentence right now. So first up, we have somosomo, and this is going to be our vocab word, and we know now that it means in the first place, or to begin with, or to start with. So in the first place, then after that we have bokutachi, and this is going to be the first person pronoun boku, which means I basically, but it has tachi after it to be a plural. So bokutachi is going to translate to we. After we have the particle wa, marking we as the topic of the sentence. Then we have kono ato, and kono is just going to translate to this. Ato is going to translate to after, so this after is the literal translation, but it's naturally going to be after this or now. Then after that, we have the grammar pattern in effect here. Dousureba in desu ka. The do here is going to give that nuance of a question. Basically, it's going to translate to what. We have the verb suru, which means to do, in its ba form. The ba form is the hypothetical form. So sureba is going to be the hypothetical form of suru, which is to do. Then right after that, we have the adjective e, and this is going to be followed by the n to be an emphatic. Then we have des in the sentence. Then we have the sentence ending particle ka to make it into a question. So literally translated, どうすればいいんですか is going to be doing what would be good. That's going to more naturally change into what should we do. And so we put that all together, and once again we have そもそも僕たちはこの後どうすればいいんですか? And this is going to translate to begin with, what should we do now?
そもそも僕たちはこの後どうすればいいんですか
For our next vocabulary word, we have the word かかわり。
よくないものをエネルギーとして僕と忍が使ってしまったことと何か関わりがありますか
And so what kakawari is going to translate to is basically just relation or connection. It's pretty similar to the word kanke, which is actually going to mean relation and connection as well, pretty much. And the word kakawari is going to be used in the episode in a pretty long sentence. So we're going to kind of break it into two parts, and we're just going to cover the half that contains the actual word kakawari. And so for that, we have よくないものをエネルギーとして僕と忍が使ってしまったことと何か関わりがありますか? And so what this half sentence will translate to is basically, is there a relation to the fact that Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy? So let's break down this half sentence. First up, we have よくないもの, and this is going to be in quotes because it is in the canon of the show. It's going to be kind of a quoted existence. よくない is actually going to be the negative form of the adjective yoi, which means good, and it's going to be modifying the word mono, which just means thing. So よくないもの is going to translate to thing that is not good, or just bad thing, basically. We have the direct object marker O, marking the よくないもの as the direct object. After that, we have energy, and this is going to be the katakana of the English word energy. Then we have toshite, modifying energy. Toshite is a word that is used to express a means. So when we have energy toshite, that's going to basically translate to as energy. After that, we have the word boku again. This is going to mean I. Then we have to, which is going to be and then we have shinobu. This is going to be the name of a character. So boku to shinobu is going to be Shinobu and I. We have the particle ga, marking Shinobu and I as the subject. We have the te form of the verb suka, which means to use. So tsukatte, and this is going to be followed by shimatta. And this is going to be a grammar pattern in and of itself. It's going to be the te form of a verb followed by the word shimatta, which is going to be the ta form of the verb shimao, which is used to express a finality to things. So tsukatte shimatta is going to express that it has been used and there's a sense of finality to it. So far in the sentence we have Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy. And so right after tsukatte shimatta, we have the word koto. And koto here is just going to basically be modifying this whole verb action to turn it into an entity that we can reference in upon itself. So basically the stuff before koto is going to translate to Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy. When we have koto right after that verb action description, it'll naturally translate to something like the fact that Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy. And so since it's the fact of us doing that, we can now reference this. So we have the particle to right after koto to mean with. And then right after that we have nanika kakawari ga arimasu ka, nani. We should know that the word nani means what. Nanika is going to more appropriately translate to something or anything. Now finally we have our vocab word here, kakawari, which is going to translate to relation or connection. Then we have the grammar pattern ga arimasu, and that's basically just going to translate to there is. And aru is an existential verb, so this will translate to there is. Kakawari, which is going to be there is a relation or there is a connection. Then we end the sentence with ka to turn into a question. So is there a relation or is there a connection? Combine that with the nanika. Is there some kind of relation or is there any kind of relation? Then we combine that with the to. So is there any kind of connection with? Then with what? Well, that's going to be the part that we had before koto. So is there some kind of relation to the fact that Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy? And so that right there is the whole sentence, or rather the half sentence that we took away from the very long sentence because that was even more challenging. And so one more time, yokunai mono o energii to shite boku to Shinobu ga tsukatte shimatta koto to nanika kakawari ga arimasu ka is going to be, is there any kind of relation to the fact that Shinobu and I use the bad things as energy?
良くないものをエネルギーとして僕と忍が使ってしまったことと何か関わりがありますか?
So that's using kakawari as connection or relation. Our next two vocabulary words are going to be used in the same sentence, and so far too we have taihai geijutsu, which is going to translate to kind of degenerate art or decadent art. And to give more context to this, this will basically be art forms that are kind of considered, well, degenerate or tasteless or something along those lines. Our second vocabulary word in the same sentence will be atsukai, and this is going to translate to basically treatment or service. In this context, it'll definitely be more in line with the definition of treatment. So now let's move into the actual line that uses both of these words, and we have boku ga raito novel o taihai geijutsu atsukai suru renshu no nakama ni mieru no kai?
僕がライトノベルを大敗芸術扱いする連中の仲間に見えるのかい?
And what this line will basically translate to is, do I look like one of those people who would treat light novel as a degenerate art form? Let's break down this sentence bit by bit. So first up we just have boku, and this is going to mean I. We have ga, marking I as the subject of the sentence. We have raito naberu as light novel basically. We have the direct object marker o to mark light novel as the direct object. Then we have our first vocab word, taihai geijutsu, and this is going to be a combination of the word taihai and the word geijutsu. Taihai will translate to basically degeneration or decadence, then geijutsu is going to translate to fine arts. Combined, they'll translate together as degenerate art. Right after that, we have our second vocab word, which is going to be atsukai, and this is going to be treatment / service, like I said earlier. In this sentence, it's going to be used as a verbal noun basically, so atsukai suru is going to be treat. Next up, we have renshu no nakama, and this is going to be a noun of a noun modification of two nouns, renshu and nakama, and this is going to be a kind of hard translation. Literally, the word renshu will translate to kind of like colleagues or company or those guys, kind of impolite, and nakama is also going to translate to colleagues or companies or friends or something in that manner. So together, they'll kind of translate to those kind of friends, and so more naturally we'll translate to that as basically one of those people basically, or one of those friends. Right after that we have the particle ni plus the word mieru, and this is just going to basically translate to appear, and in this context it'll just most appropriately translate to do I look like. Right after mieru is the particle no, then we have kai, and this is basically just going to be the same thing as having ka at the end of the sentence to turn into a question. It's just a different kind of form of that. And so if we bring this whole sentence together, we have the translation, do I look like one of those people who treats light novels as a degenerate art? Boku ga raito novel o taihai geijutsu atsukai suru renshu no nakama ni mieru no kai? 僕がライトノベルを大敗芸術扱いする連中の仲間に見えるのかい? Now, finally, for our last vocabulary term, we have the word yushikisha.
よいよい、特に今回発売されるシリーズ第21弾は有識者の間でも期待が高い。
And so what this word will translate to is just basically expert or knowledgeable person. In the episode, it is used in the line 特に今回発売されるシリーズ第21弾は有識者の間でも期待が高い. And what this line will translate to is basically this 21st novel in the series is highly anticipated even by the expert. Let's break down this sentence bit by bit. First up, we have tokuni, and tokuni is going to translate to basically especially or particularly or in particular. We have right after that konkai, which is going to mean this time. We have hatsubai suru, and this is a verbal noun. Suru is in its passive form, so it's going to be sareru instead of suru. So instead of to sell, it's going to be to be sold. Right after that, we have sirizu, and this is going to translate to series. We have dai nijuichi dan, and this is going to translate to 21. The dai at the beginning of that is expressing an ordinal here, and the dan at the end of that is going to be basically a counter for parts of the stories. So together that'll be the 21st novel in the series basically. Right after we have the particle wa marking this 21st novel in the series as the topic of the sentence. Then we finish the sentence with yushikisha no aida demo kitai ga takai. And so yushikisha is going to of course translate to experts here. We have no aida, and aida is going to basically translate to space or time. This is kind of a confusing interpretation, but basically more naturally that'll be something like even accounting for the experts or even in the realm of experts. We have the demo right after aida, that's going to translate to the even there. Then right after that we have the word kitai, which is going to translate to expectations. We have the particle ga right after the word kitai to mark it as the recipient of the adjective that's about to follow, which is the e adjective takai, which means high. So kitai ga takai is going to be expectations are high. So now we wrap everything together, and once again we have toku ni konkai hatsubai sareru shirizu no dai 21弾は有識者の間でもKitai ga takai is going to translate to this 21st novel in the series in particular is highly anticipated by even the experts.
よいよい、特に今回発売されるシリーズ第21弾は有識者の間でも期待が高い。
And so there you go, that's our usage of the word yushikisha, which translates to expert or knowledgeable person in this sentence. And with that, that's gonna wrap up our edition of anime vocabulary for the 10th episode of Owarimonogatari.